Welcome to I Think It's All Sober, Sean Daniels. How are you, my friend?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Bright and early in Hackney.
I love it.
The depths of East London.
That's right.
It was funny because I was walking from the station and you walked past me, but I didn't know it was you. But you were walking past me and I was like, that guy looks like a playwright. And then I saw you come in and I was like, it was you.
That guy looks like he doesn't belong here. What is he doing? Yeah.
Yeah, sober people in Hackney tend to not.
That's right. We stick out. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this, we're really excited to speak to you actually because we, with They Think It's All Sober, we've endeavoured over the last 2 years to get people from all walks of life, all different professions, and everyone's got a really interesting story, from growing up to the point of sobriety and then like recovery. And you are the first playwright.
Oh, amazing.
That we've had on, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, you definitely are.
I was about to say, yeah, musicians, influencer. Yeah, definitely the first playwright.
And so, yeah, we're really excited to talk to you about, the play, the whole reason you're in London. And we will definitely come on to that because it's very exciting. And as you kind of said prior to this recording, it is almost like a reflection of your journey, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, excited to chat and get into it.
Yeah. So the play is The White Chip, which is at the Southwark Playhouse. And it really is my journey because when I got sober, for so long I had complained that there was nothing that was funny about recovery. There was nothing that was about science. There was nothing that wasn't kind of old-timey language. And so at some point you just have to be like, well, then shut up and write the thing that you can't find. Nobody wants to hear you complain anymore about it. And so I've been really lucky to do it over in the US and then to finally have it here.
That's amazing. And I mean, I think saying what you just said, it's the same reason why we started this podcast. We were like, there wasn't anything that particularly resonated to us at that particular time.
Well, there was no one kind of highlighting, because it felt very much like get up at 5 a.m, have an ice bath, work out 7 times a week, like be fucking and we were like, no, there should be something where people can go on and talk about like getting fucked up and doing way too many drugs and almost looking back and it being like that was fun but really dangerous, but having that dark humor. It's kind of how I've always dealt with like anything in life, whether it be grief or anything, was like coming at it with a real sense of like, okay, we've got to embrace the fact this has happened. Well, let's talk about it and make it fun and dark. And I don't know, I think you get to people that way.
Well, and I grew up right in the 80s. And so we just had like after school specials on TV. I don't know if you had them here, but like very special episodes where they dealt with things. And it was always like very serious. And so, but then you go to a great meeting and like people tell horrible stories and the room roars with laughter, because everybody understands they got arrested the same way or whatever, and suddenly like everyone, laughs and feels together, but we just don't see that in pop culture. That never gets represented. And so, when I decided to get sober, of course I was terrified because pop culture had told me it was going to be weird. I'm going to go to rooms with like 3 people in a circle and they're going to chant my name at me. And, and it was like, none of that is true, but like, that's what I thought. Yeah. And if I had known that it would be kind of joyous and hilarious and delicious in different ways, I probably would have done it earlier.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, I think to give our listeners a bit of context, it'd be great to kind of go back to earlier Sean life. So I think what we'll do is step into Jamie's time machine.
This is something you're not ready for. You ready?
All right, I'm ready. Okay. I'm ready.
You're in the time machine?
All right.
Right, so we are, young Sean is in the room. And what were your first memories of sort of alcohol growing up?
I was 12 when I had my first drink. And, I was always like kind of like awkward, chubby kid. And it tasted, I remember the first time I had it, it tasted terrible. It tasted like metal. And, a friend of ours like had an older brother, had like a garbage bag full of beers and had like snuck it into someone's house. And it was like the holy grail of what it would be. And I thought it was going to be amazing, but it tasted terrible. And then but I just kept drinking it. I think I had like 2. And, I like suddenly, I was funnier. It was easier to hang out with people. I wasn't as anxious. And so like it was great and it was fun and I fit in. And so I was really hooked from the beginning. And it just helped me to connect with everybody more. Yeah. And so, as I got older, it was just, I don't know. It really helped me to kind of fit in and to feel like I was part of it. And even as I got older, I was always like a big drinker that suddenly became part of my personality, that became part of how I connected with people. And then even as I got older, after that, like, it was great at helping to get jobs and to meet people, and it felt adventurous. And I always just, I know the cliche is that like it worked for you until it didn't, but like it really worked for me until it didn't. And I think I struggled getting sober, and I finally had like, when I was in rehab, like a counselor be like, all the great times that you had with drinking, like those were real. And you don't have to act like they didn't happen. Yeah. Like you did make amazing friends, and you did have phenomenal experiences, and you did, you were, you got to sleep with people you'd never get to sleep with if you were just the awkward sober you. And so like all of that is true, and you don't have to act like that wasn't. The other truth is that like you will die if you continue to drink, but like both those things are true. So I just think when I was 12, I was kind of hooked right away. And I think for a long time, it was really helpful to me in terms of going to parties where I didn't fit in and I could have, 2 awful beers. And then this was also like the 80s, right? So we had like wine coolers. I mean, we had all different types of drinks and, real positive experiences around it.
I was going to ask a question actually about US culture, because it's funny, we have a lot of UK guests on, and the UK is very much like you're 12, you're 13, you're in a park, you're drinking like liters of cider out of brown bags. And I think the perception, tell me if you disagree, Tom, in the UK of America, because the drinking age is 21, there's very much like a UK rhetoric around like, well, American people don't drink when they're young. American people don't drink until they're 18, 19, 20, 21. But 12 is really young to think that that's 9 years away from legal age. That'd be like us drinking at 9, It's
so funny. We think of you all as being like much more evolved and like, like it's less because you can't drink till you're 21. It's like this forbidden thing.
Right.
And like it's really put on a pedestal that like adults get to do it, and it's a special thing. And so we always think about like, oh, we wouldn't all be alcoholics if we were French because they get to drink wine. My wife is German, and like, their family they could drink beer, as small kids. So it's like less of it kind of just is whatever it is. It's not this thing that you're not allowed to have, and therefore as a young kid you like want it desperately.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, by the sounds of it, you were very much using it as like a social tool growing up, which, I've certainly found the same, and a lot of our guests that came on felt that it gave them the confidence to go and, put on, whether that was like putting on a kind of mask and going to a party and actually being able to chat to girls and, do stuff that otherwise maybe you didn't feel confident enough doing, which I think is just part of it growing up, isn't it? If you're naturally like introvert or shy, it can just bring you out in a situation. You can see why people go, oh, actually that thing that I had enables me to do this.
Yeah.
Which you can see it. And then in hindsight, it's probably you only realise that maybe that's not the healthiest thing like to do and have.
Well, probably what's in the U.S., because we say that no one under 21 is drinking, right? There's really nothing taught to you about like, for those of you that are, in the like harm reduction version of drinking, like, so you don't understand what it is or what's too much, and you just kind of experiment. And then like, one night you drink too much and you throw up everywhere, and then you're like, note to self, that's too much.
No whiskey.
That's right. And then somebody gives you like you can drink beer and then whiskey, but not whiskey and then beer. Like you have to learn just like slowly what all the rules are.
Yeah.
Because no one's educating you, because you're just not supposed to be doing it, and it all feels very forbidden. But it's so funny that you say that you were like drinking in fields, drinking cider, because I feel like that is exactly our experience.
Right.
That we are somewhere in a field somewhere. There's like 5, 13-year-old boys.
Yeah.
One, 16-year-old boy who could drive us there. And then we'd just drive out to a field with like drinks that we stole from somebody's parents, or somebody has an older brother that bought it. Or, we used to sit out front of gas stations and try to offer people money to buy us beer when they went in.
Yeah.
And usually somebody is like, oh yeah, man, that's awesome. And then, they would buy you beer and buy themselves one. And so then you go to a field and drink it. So it's also like the dumbest thing ever, because you have no choice but to drive home from that, so, but it was the exact same experience.
That's fascinating. And then I guess through high school and college, if you went, like, what was your experiences there?
Once I got to college, high school, there was a decent amount of drinking, but it was like weekend drinking.
Yeah. Right.
It wasn't, and then when you get to college, it's like, oh, you can go out all the time. And it's a huge part of it, And I went to a big university, so there's sports and there's a huge theater program, and just drinking and some drugs was just a part of what the culture was. That's what parties were.
Yeah.
That's it would have been. I would have felt really out of it to not be. I didn't have to be drinking as much as I was, but if you weren't drinking, I feel like you're really missing out on a huge part of what just the culture of it was.
Yeah. And I guess for you at that time, what did you feel alcohol and drugs, if they were involved, were giving you? Did you feel like you were being the best version of Sean? Or
Yeah, I think same. Of course, you look back and you're like, oh my God, I'm sure I was just so loud. But but I do think at the time, like, it just made me more comfortable. It made me funnier. Mm-hmm. It made me, everything that it did at 12, it still did for me at 21.
Sure.
Which is just to say that, like, I could go to a party and I could chat with people and I could be funny, and the party could go till 5 a.m. and we would have amazing memories of what it was, and everybody go out for breakfast the next morning, and all these things that just wouldn't be happening if we weren't doing it. And so my sponsor is my roommate from when I was a sophomore in college. Yeah, because we were huge partiers.
Yeah.
And he got sober, some like 6 or 7 years before me. And I remember when he got sober, I was like, that makes sense. He drank a lot. And then when I got sober, I was like, oh wait, no, I was there with him. I don't know why I thought this was going to be different. But it makes sense, because that was just part of, and that was also part of our identity. I think, we weren't like attractive and shape kids. We were like weird theater kids. And so for us to be able to drink, just allowed us to really fit in a way, so the exact same thing as being 12.
I was going to ask a question, actually, and sorry if I flit a lot around, like asking questions about the American culture, but I think our listeners will be really interested. Obviously, when we see American World and college, etc. on TV, it does very much feel like we don't have it so much here in the UK anymore. We used to, maybe when we were growing up, but everyone was kind of in their lane, whether it was like the sports kids or the theatre kids or the music kids. Was there that assimilation at parties when it came together, and then people sort of at college were in their own sort of groups, and then partying and booze would bring everyone together? Or...
Yeah, so so definitely you had like the like army kids, you had the like sports kids, but at parties, and especially if you were part of a fraternity or something like that, it was an amazing mixing point, And so we would have these parties where it was like theater kids and sports kids, and this like huge multicultural group of people, and you were like, none of these people would ever be together unless we were all,
getting fucked up.
having an amazing party. And so like, we're doing it. This is like, we're laying the groundwork for world peace here, and in some ways, to my, just the point making earlier, like some of that like is true. I don't know that we would have ever hung out with the like ROTC kids, which is the kids that are training to go into the armed forces, as theater kids, unless, they thought we were great partiers, and so they'd come hang out with us. And so there was a way that it connected us in many different ways.
That's interesting. I mean, do you think at this point, would you say it was like problematic drinking, or was it normalized by the fact that most other people were in the same boat.
So like of course it's problematic drinking, but at the time it just felt normal. But like, this is in the play. We had like a party one time, and so like we piled up a bunch of hay and we were gonna like dive off the roof into the hay.
Right.
And so I got up there and I jumped and tried to cannonball into the hay, and I missed the hay altogether. And I dislocated my pelvis, and I pinched 2 vertebrae, and I knocked the wind out of myself. And I remember thinking like, I'm paralyzed. I must be paralyzed. And my friend like scooped me up. And I remember thinking, the only thing I know is that you're not supposed to move people. But the wind's been knocked out of me, so I can't possibly tell him, And he's like, this guy needs a bong hit right away, and like carries me inside, And so like someone packs the bong.
Neck's hanging out.
That's what I mean. And I was just like, I'm sure I'm paralyzed from the waist down, but I'm being carried in like a bong hit is being put in my mouth, And so to look back at that moment and you think like, no, of course that's problematic.
Yeah.
But that also just felt like you're like a mortal, what I mean? Like, so you don't ever think that like really bad things are going to happen at that moment. So
that's brilliant.
It's also probably quite scary thinking that probably not to advocate this for anyone listening, but that probably actually helps you being inebriated, because you probably didn't realize the enormity of the impact that you just had. Do you know what I mean? You'd be like,
not that anyone should do this, but they're always like, drunk drivers, don't get injured as much in car accidents, right? Because they don't tense up before it happens, right? So it probably did help. But also, I wouldn't be cannonballing off a
that's very
third-story roof onto almost a pile of hay.
I love that, Roland. Shit, let's get this guy an ambulance. What you need is bong hit.
That's right. He's like scooped me up, and it was like, I knew. I was like, this is a horrible mistake, But then I did have a bong hit, and then like feeling came back in my legs, and then I was like, okay, and then I rallied, and then the next day I got up to walk, and I was like, oh, I'm seriously injured. And then it was like, like a 6 months of physical therapy after that to like get your because
because that's like.
It's a real, to pinch 2 vertebrae, and also to pinch 2 vertebrae, dislocate your pelvis when you're like 20, right? Like your body's supposed to bounce back. So you really, I am very lucky. And then of course, like 1,000 other times that I could have just died from alcohol poisoning on a bathroom floor somewhere, but like I didn't. So, or I threw up before I went to bed, or, all those things that felt normal, and looking back now,
probably weren't.
Of course was,
it's scary.
Lucky.
I remember being at a house party in Cardiff once, and I'd done quite a lot of cocaine, and I just remember sweating so much, and my heart and I was just thinking, oh, I'm really high right now. And then actually, when I went home the next day, I was like, I probably was having some kind of minor heart issue, because I was literally like, I was wet to the touch, like all over my body, and my heart was going. You just don't think about it, and then now you look back and you're like, that could have ended. And you're right. There's 1,000 other stories of those where you're like, it could have just been. We had one of our other guests on that came. Well, you were with him, and said that they were just in the street, and a guy just pulled a fucking gun on him, and because he was so hammered, he just went, "Fucking do it, do me a fucking favor." And you're like, "Fuck."
Yeah.
Like, that's the reality of some of the decisions we make when we're fucked up.
It's just decisions, isn't it? It's like the point where sober you would just be like, no way am I jumping off a roof.
Of course.
And I've done the same in Make's back garden on pills. Tried to go over into a tree, ended up uninjured. But I'm thinking, I could have died then. Like, what's wrong?
Yeah. We were just talking about this. We had 2 spring break in the US, as like you get this week off in the spring. Yeah. And so each year we would get in the car, we would pack a bunch of booze, and then we would start drinking and pick a direction and drive and have like a week-long adventure. It's a terrible idea. 1 year we went north, 1 year we went south. Wow. Like, you don't know where you're going to end up. You don't know where you're going to sleep. You're drinking while you're driving. I mean, it's awful, and yet like they were super fun adventures, but like we all could have been killed.
Spring break is wild. I've been in Miami when spring break's been on, and it's like, carnage.
Yeah.
So I can imagine, doing those kind of adventures would have been pretty wild. But so I guess like at this point, your early 20s, when you're doing the sort of roof jumping expeditions, and where did sort of through your early 20s, I mean, I guess you've always been creative, right? And, you know, how did it sort of timeline from your early 20s, like drink, career? What was the sort of trajectory?
So I started a theater company with a bunch of my friends when I graduated from university. So that's like 22, and it really took off, and we had some big successes, and we had
Amazing.
And it was drinking was just a big part of it, you know. And it's also like maybe similar to musicians, like the performing arts are a very late night business. And so, you know, we would do shows at like 8, 10:30, and then at midnight. So you get done with shows at 1:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
And then everybody's going out till 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
And so it was really baked into it. You know, the truth is, looking back now, at some point in my mid-20s, it probably like helps and hurts. Like it probably begins to... There's probably different decisions I would have made, probably opportunities that I missed. You know, at the time, it didn't feel that way. You're just kind of like barreling ahead. But I think, you know, it's probably the same over here. It's really baked into artists in the US that being self-destructive is part of the bargain that you make. So like part of what makes you special has to like, you have to like burn brighter than other people. And we love... You know, we love artists that like died young because it felt like they were the truest version of themselves. And, you know, like everyone loves that like Hemingway was like a great drunk, but like the man put a shotgun in his mouth and ended his life. Like that's not how we all hope to go. But we still romanticize what it was, right? And everybody loves Jack Kerouac, and there's like pictures of him like falling asleep at parties, and everyone's like, he's real.
It always reminds me of that Hunter S. Thompson thing where it's like wake up, cocaine, 5 a.m. acid, like, and you go through it.
That's right. That's
like,
right.
Oh,
that's what I mean. Yeah. And so, and you know, Pulitzer Prize winning authors, like 80% of them are alcoholics. So you also begin to buy into this idea that if you're going to be a true artist, you have to be living this hardcore version of yourself. And maybe, to be truthful, like some of that is true, you know, some of who said write drunk, edit sober. Like there is versions of that it's just like it frees you up and then you figure out what it is. But you know, it creeps, right? It definitely creeps. And you know, I used to drink on the weekend, and then I drank a couple times in the week, and then I drank every night, and then I drank at lunch, and the next thing you know, I was like a really high-profile director and writer in the U.S., and I'm drinking before I get in the shower in the morning, and I don't even track that creep. It just and only once I got sober, looking back, to be like, it's pretty much a straight line. Over, you know, 20 to like I think like 37 is when I started to try to get sober.
Right.
So it's like between then and there, you can just watch. I'm just ingesting a little bit more each day, and then eventually I wake up so hungover in the morning that like I'll be physically ill if I don't have a drink or two before I get in the shower.
It's interesting what you said about how it probably helped and hurt. Yeah. Because we discuss this quite a lot, especially in like our careers within music and just the creative space in general, is that I honestly don't know what my career would look like if I hadn't have drunk. Yeah. And I think there's definitely like a seesaw and a balance point, isn't there? Like I feel like I probably created a lot of opportunities by being at certain places and by having, you know, a party reputation. And Sam, who I work with, because I'm kind of in a duo, we were like the party guys that would work their asses off but would also be out latest and you know, so there was this kind of reputation that if you wanted to, like, people wanted to be around as a certain, you know, at times, probably took it too far at certain points. And then it's trying to work out, like, you know, and I think we said, like, ideally, now looking back, if there was a pinpoint, I wish I went sober probably 5 years earlier than I did.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so the theater was Dad's Garage, and it was in Atlanta, Georgia. And we would, you know, we would have these like late night shows that we would do, and it'd be packed full of young people, you know, at 1 a.m. watch. And like, that's part of that is like the culture that we built around it. And so every other theater in the country was like, how are you doing that? Like, our audience is 1,000 years old. Like, how is your audience like 23-year-olds, you know? And part of it was like, we sold, beer in buckets. You could buy a bucket of beer.
Nice.
And it was like a big metal pail, and it came with 5 beers in it. You know, and like, everybody loved it, and they sold out, and they brought it, and we replaced, you know, chairs with couches so that you could sit there and drink beer and watch theater. And it was like, and the tickets were cheap, and the shows were like sometimes great, sometimes not, but who cares? You know, it's interesting because, you know, now I can't even fathom starting a show at midnight, you know, and getting done at 1:30. Like, that's just not even on my timetable.
It's so funny, isn't it, how things change? Because I went and saw one of my favourite bands, Deftones, played Sunday, and it was in Crystal Palace Park, which from where I live is like 50 miles, but a bit of a weird location to get to. And I remember they came on, and me and my friend Sarah were just chatting and looked, and it was like, I don't know, 9:40, and we looked at each other and we're like, way past bedtime. And I was like, oh no, go walk to the car. And then so by the time we get back, it was like 12:30, and I'm like,
of course,
like 4 hours. So it's funny, isn't it, like how you comprehend, like, I don't know how you kind of existed on those late night schedules, because they still do happen and you have to embrace it, but that was just the norm then, I suppose, for you.
Yeah, but you're right. If I had gotten sober 5 years earlier, because it helped, but in those last 5 years I was blowing opportunities because of it. By then, at the end, I was, you know, at some point I was like maintenance drinking. At some point I was like just trying to not feel ill. At some point I was just trying to, like, you know, and like you'd have maybe like 30 minutes of like feeling good, and then you start to feel sick again, and then I'm just trying to calibrate the amount of alcohol in me at all moments.
Wow.
Or like how long the day is until I can have a drink, or, you know, what's acceptable. So
it really started to dictate every hour of your being.
I mean, by the end, I really could only go about 20 or 25 minutes without a drink.
Wow.
Like, it really, and I had a pretty low bottom, but I think also I had a pretty low bottom because I was a successful artist. People just thought, like, that's just part of it. That's, you know, that's like, you know, that's part of who he is, and he's a little crazy, and he did seem a little drunk this afternoon, but, you know, it's, the shows are still going well, and you know, it's you're always fundraising, and fundraising is like very schmoozy, you know, hanging out with people, having drinks, donors making them feel like they're a part of it. And so, you know, it does help. And then at some point, those last 5 years, I had some great opportunities that I blew because I, you know, wasn't as focused, or was a little late, or hungover for them, and or didn't show up at all, or showed up drunk, or, you know.
Yeah, I was going to ask, actually, in that period of time, did you think anyone around you thought your drinking was problematic, or was it very much like, oh, this crazy artist?
No, I think people did, but I think, you know, there was a lot of kind of like functioning alcoholism, but people could kind of pull it back in moments where they needed to, for big moments. And then at some point I could pull it back, and then at some point I couldn't. You know, at some point I just went over. You know, they say, like, you know, once a cucumber becomes a pickle, it never goes back. You know, and so for me, it's like at some point I crossed over into being a pickle, and then it was like, oh, I can't on a big weekend with important donors, like, just go cold turkey. And then, you know, celebrate on Sunday night. It was like, no, I'm always kind of maintenance doing. And then near the very end, the last year of my drinking was the saddest, because that was nothing but private drinking. Like, the last year, everybody thought I had a problem, and I was talking a good game, and I believed it. about wanting to get sober, and I was going to meetings and I was going to therapy, but I was also privately drinking.
Got you.
So like the last year was nothing but me drinking alone. So then, because like even my drinking buddies had been like, you at some point you have a drink, this is out of control.
Yeah.
You know, and then you're like, what? How can you think this is out of control?
Yeah.
Like you've been there with me. But they were right. And so, yeah, that last year was like this. Now that I look back, it's like, oh, at some point it was just about like drinking before events, you know, hiding drinks on me or somewhere that I can go get a drink real quick, or telling people that I'm sober and then run to the bar. I would do a lot of like run to the bar next door. Like if we're at a restaurant, say I'm going to the bathroom, run out the front door, run to the bar next door, get like a double, you know, drink it real quick, use the bathroom and come back. And, you know, and so much effort, so much time spent.
It becomes tiring, right?
Oh yeah. You know, when I got sober, there was, first of all, I didn't understand that like 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. happened. You know, I was like, what is this time? Where is everybody? You know? And then I realized I still did the math for a long time. Like I'd arrive somewhere, like today, right? Like I got here like a half an hour early and I couldn't get in the building. And so in the olden days, I'd be like, okay, well, I can, you know, there's 20 minutes. I can go get a drink real quick and be back. You know, my mind just always was doing the math of, and then, you know, the like making sure you have enough at night so it's available to you the next morning and not drinking all of it. And when do you need to go buy more? I mean, it becomes, at some point you're like, I spend so much of my life thinking about getting the next one and making sure that it's there.
God. If you don't mind, you mentioned your sort of bottom moment. Do you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, so it's funny because at one point I would go to like meetings and people would be like, you know, well, I've been divorced into jail and all this. And I was like, well, I have not done those things, so I'm fine. And then at one point, like my wife at the time had left me and I had blacked out while driving and crashed my car. And then I had been fired from my high profile job because I went really drunk to a big donor event. And so I decided that I was going to take my own life because it had just, you know, it's just at some point it was, this sounds dumb, but it was very true. It was October 12th. And I was like, oh my God, October has 31 days in it. Like there's no way I lived through this month. That is so many days. Like every day is so big. And so, so I was going to try to walk out in front of traffic. That was my plan. And I tried to do it a couple times. And then I called my mother, who did not get along with at the time. And I don't even know why I called her, but I think it was just like a cry for help. And we had not talked in a long time. And it was the 1-year anniversary of my mother getting sober, but I did not know that because we had not been in touch. And so she's walking home from the meeting where she gets her 1-year chip, and I call saying like, I'm suicidal and I don't know how to do this. And so she kind of gets me through the night and gets me to a rehab center. And to this day, we still have the same sobriety date. So every year she gives me like her chip from the year before. So I'm like 1 year behind her.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah, but it was like I am a big fan of rehab because I really had to go. Like there was no, and even in rehab, I was trying to like sneak out. So it's like I really had to go lock myself away for 28 days because I had just gone so far down the depths of drinking.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, isn't it, how things align, and you know, the serendipity, you know, making that call and probably hearing that, you know, your mum was 1 year sober. And I mean, did that trigger anything for you when you thought like, wow, she's on her own journey and doing this?
You know, I think I probably clocked it, but at the time I, you know, was just so panicked about myself. I think like a little bit later it seemed to really sink in.
Yeah.
On kind of what it is. But also like my mom had been a huge drinker. So, you know, I've never gone to like Al-Anon or Adult Children of Alcoholics, but I qualify, you know?
Yeah.
And so I guess also like, you know, first of all, like it's shocking when a parent says something and you're like, I've been so obsessed. I missed entirely. This whole thing is happening with you. Right. And now I have a child and I understand like, oh, she's not aware of, you know, like things happening in our life. She's, you know, things happening in her life. So, but no, it definitely was, you know, and now, you know, part of why I wanted to write this play was when I was in rehab, you know, I finally found like a group of men that talked about science, that talked about like brain chemistry, that talked about, and one of those big things is like genetic disposition, right? So it's like that it can be like anything else, like cancer or diabetes. It's like a combination of the genes that you're dealt and choices that you make along the way. Mm-hmm. And so also to be like, oh, my mother was an alcoholic and my grandfather was an alcoholic and the stories of my great grandfather was that he was one. And suddenly you're like, oh, okay, this is all part of, like I had to convince myself that it wasn't just this moral failing, that I was weak. And part of why I talk about the arts so much is that I really thought I was the only person in the American theater that couldn't hold their liquor. Like I really thought everybody else is doing great.
Yeah.
And I'm struggling. And of course that's not the case at all. But to just understand like my family lineage and like it doesn't even skip a generation, it goes straight down. Helped me to not think about it as just like I'm a screw up. So like that, maybe that was the more helpful part to me.
Yeah, it's so fascinating, isn't it? We're both, you know, children of addicts, and you sort of have to do that thing where you come to terms with your own journey and their journey and make peace with that as well. And I think it's such a fascinating thing because so many of our guests that come on come from families of addicts.
Yeah.
And you know, whether it's a genetic disposition or nurture or nature or everything around it, and then the place you're put in, and it's just this perfect melting pot to exacerbate something that's there. It's always so fascinating to hear other people's journeys. How was rehab for you? Because I imagine at the point of, you know, sadly being at the point you wanted to take your own life, to then the next day going into a facility where you're locked up. What were those 28 days like? What did you take away from it? And did you come out of it feeling like this was a journey you wanted to be on?
So it was right at the end of my rehab is when I'd struggled all through rehab because rehab is always portrayed as like this magical thing you do at the end and then it fixes everybody, you know? And so I got into rehab and it was like, oh no, I'm screwed. This is just like group therapy. This is just like sitting around and talking and
no bong hit to get you through.
No, there's no nothing. And so I actually began to panic in rehab because I just thought like rehab is like the final emergency thing you pull, right? Yeah. And then it makes everybody better. And then I went to rehab and I was like, oh no, I'm still me. I'm just talking to some guy. Like there's nothing magical that happens in rehab except that you can't leave. And I really struggled with the God concept. Mm-hmm. And you know, they would always say like a God, but of your understanding. And I was like, well, sure. But like I work in a business where like words are purposefully chosen. Yeah. You know, it's like lyrics. It's just like, no, we really thought about what these words are. Yeah, so if you tell me that like it's God, but that's not what we mean, then like that's not a thing to me. Yeah. You know, then choose words that are. So I really struggled with it, and only at the very end, you know, the guy that read our thing was like, he could tell I was screwed, and so he hooked me up with this group of men that got together and talked about science about it the whole time, and that really unlocked it for me. So when I got out of rehab, I knew that I felt like I was on a path. You know, it'd been a long time since I had 28 days also, so I really didn't want to screw that up.
Yeah.
And also I was pretty aware that like I pretty much trashed almost everything in my life, so I was pretty determined to try to do it. But I still, you know, I felt like a fraud. I don't know that I understood any of it. I still, you know, I remember at 1 year, everybody's like, amazing, 1 year, you know, and I still felt like I don't know. I really don't understand what's going on. I haven't drank in a year, but I feel like I'm just a fraud about it. I don't know that I understand. I feel like I actually maybe understand a little less than I did at the beginning. And it really took me several years. I think like at year 5, I was like, okay, maybe I'm all right. Maybe I'm beginning to understand what this is, you know? And so I just didn't drink during that time, but I don't know that I had any deep enlightenment. And I really had to work for those first couple years through tough moments.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's never easy, is it?
Yeah.
And, you know, I think myself and Jamie, I mean, we were fortunate enough to be able to stop of our own accord. And I certainly didn't know if it was possible because I'd never done more than the occasional dry January we have here.
Right.
And yeah, it's just been a roller coaster ever since. I'm like 3.5 years now, and there's times where it's easy, there's times where it's tough. Sometimes it feels like I never ever drunk in the first place.
Of course. That's a whole life ago, right?
Yeah.
You know.
And it's just riding the wave of like what sobriety is, and it's still, you know, challenging at times, but you know, for the most part, it's, you know, ultimately the best decision that certainly I've ever made. And, you know, there's been so many benefits from it. So how long have you been sober now?
13 and a half years. So it'll be 14 years this October.
Sober Jedi territory.
I know. We're getting there, yeah. You know, it's so funny. I had dinner with 2 gentlemen that had like 22 and 20 years. And so I was like, what's it like having 22 years of sobriety? And they were like, it's terrible. Because at this point, like, I can't blame anything on my addiction. Like, I have made terrible choices. I have treated people poorly. I have made bad business decisions. You know, I have like upset myself. And I have to every time just be like, well, then I guess that's a part of me that I need to work on. Like, I don't get the free pass at all of, well, I was drinking. And they're like, so it only gets harder because at some point, like, you have to work on you.
Yeah.
And you no longer have, you know, you haven't had a drink in 22 years. So that's not why you were an asshole today.
Yeah.
You know,
that's just an asshole.
That's right. You're just an asshole. And so, like, you have to decide if you want to be that or not. And so I guess I feel that now at 14, like, okay, you know, I have a wife and a daughter that have never seen me drink.
That's amazing.
So, you know, when we have tough times, like, I can't blame it on that. You know, I have to think about like, what was my role in this and what could I have done better? And maybe I'm still an alcoholic. So, you know, those instincts play in, but it wasn't about drinking, right? It's just about the choices that I made.
Yeah. I mean, it's something I talk about a lot because my boy just turned 7, and I think I definitely changed my relationship when he was born with drinking. I prioritized seeing him at the weekends because I was like always out and away during the weeks in the studio. So started adjusting my relationship. But I think it's one of the things I felt proudest of was when stopping, being like, he's never really going to remember me being drunk or hungover.
Yeah.
And he took priority from when he was born. So even if I was morbidly like hungover or / hadn't slept or rolled over, I'd still do whatever I promised to do. Because, you know, it's the obligations and duties. But I think that's one of the kind of things that, you know, for my wife, who was there through probably the worst of me and my behavior, to now, you know, seeing the change in that has been infinitely better for our relationship, and since got married and the rest of it. So, but it's it's amazing to hear that, like, you know, you've been sober that long, that you've met someone, had a child, and they've never known you to drink in the first place.
My daughter's 7 too, so we're in the same, you know, same boat there. And I mean, that's why sometimes it feels like I didn't ever drink, because I have this whole new life now, and I have so many people that didn't know me before, and you know, and it's amazing, right? Because like, people don't ever post photos of me drinking, you know, like the world kind of knows, and I've rebuilt my career in a slightly different way, so it does feel like a lifetime ago, right? That was me, And then every now and then I have like certain friends that remember it. But it's good. I think it's good to remember it because when I got sober, somebody said to me, like, I hope that you always remember your worst day. Because, this is the thing is I haven't had a drink in 13 and a half years, but like I'll go to New York and be away from my family and I'm walking down the street. And then like for half a second, my brain is like, you're not going to see anybody today. And you're just like, who the fuck said that? Like, where did that come? Like, where did that voice? And of course, you're like, I'm not going to do it, but you're like, that's still
there.
It's still there, And it's like my brain is still like just checking in, and that's after 13 and a half years. And so I just have to be honest I have to remember how bad it was. I did the math at one point, and I was like, every drink I take costs me a week. Like when I was relapsing all the time, if I had a drink, it would usually I'd take about a week later, I could probably get sober again.
Yeah.
And so I'd always be like, do you have a week to lose right now? I'd be like, nope, I don't.
It's interesting because one of the most recent episodes we did with me and Jamie was called One Won't Hurt.
One Won't Hurt.
And it's that whole, because we have probably half our listeners are sober curious, still drink.
Sure.
Just try and check in and see, where they're at and find it useful. And then we've got a big Patreon community and a lot of people that listen that are sober. And I think it's that, that reminder, even when you put some distance and some time into your sobriety, and no matter where you are on that sort of sober spectrum, that one will hurt. And, I think it's constant reminding. That's why we do this podcast, isn't it? And it's why people go to meetings and various things, is that constant reminder of how quickly everything can derail, right?
Yeah. Well, I remember asking my father if he had high cholesterol because I got diagnosed with high cholesterol, and he was like, no. And then a week later he called and he's like, oh, actually I take cholesterol medicine. That's why I don't have high cholesterol. And I was like, no, that's what I was asking. And it's like, okay, but like, so he knows that there's certain things he has to take. And if he stops, like his cholesterol will go back up, right? So like we kind of understand that in terms of medicine, right? And I think recovery is the same way. Like, I don't know that you ever get fixed of anything, cholesterol or diabetes or, blood pressure. It's like, no, you understand that there's a certain level of maintenance you have to do in order to stay healthy.
Yeah. So let's talk about the white chip.
Yeah.
So tell us about it. Tell us about how it's gone down in the US and what we can expect from it in the UK.
So the white chip is, because I'd grown up in theater, I wanted to write a piece kind of about my journey because I wanted to write something funny. I wanted to write something that had science in it. And I just wanted to kind of break down this idea of artists that have to be like self-destructive. And so I wrote the piece. And then I was really lucky. I had a lot of fantastic people, kind of Broadway producers early on. This gentleman, Tom Curtihy, get involved and support it, and we produced it a couple times, and then we produced it in New York twice. And this most recent time we did it, I had a bunch of like sober celebrities that came on to be a part of it. Hank Azaria and John Larroquette and Jason Biggs, this Tony winner, Annalie Ashford. They all came on to help make it happen, and it was great. It was really phenomenal. And the crazy thing that happened though from it is, after every performance, somebody would come up to the actors and be like, okay, I'm ready to get help. And these poor actors are like not trained social workers. Yeah, they're like, they're like actors at a show. They're like, sure, let me get you to a stage manager. And the very first performance, someone came up and said, I'm an alcoholic and I'm actually not sober at this moment, but like I'm ready to get help. And so after that, we started putting together like resources for people if they were interested. And after 2 weeks, that person wrote back and said, I have 14 days as of today. And so we had a great run. It was sold out in New York, and Danielle Torrento, who's a phenomenal producer over here, came over and saw it and said, I want to bring this to London. But I only want to do it in London if we can really do like 6 months of outreach in advance. I don't want to just try to market to sober people or sober curious people. I want to really be in the community and feel like that they understand and that it's a value, because so often we do shows and, we kind of figure out what the value to the community is, but I don't know, maybe we're fooling ourselves. And this one is like, no, there are, I don't know what it is over here, but in the US, someone dies from overdosing every 7 minutes.
Wow.
So it's and that's overdosing. That's not even counting other things like car crashes or liver failure or, you know, like that are probably because of addiction, but don't get categorized that way. Yeah. So that's probably undercounting. And so we've been in rehearsal. It's going to be at the Southwark Playhouse. You can go to the Southwark Playhouse website. And, you know, it's 90 minutes of hopefully a very funny conversation about what it is. And we found in the US, and we'll see if it's true here, because I'm sure British audiences are different, but like the perfect audience was like a third former drunks, a third people that were curious, and like a third civilians. Yeah. Because if you had just civilians, it's a horrible story. Like why would anybody do this? And they just sit there shocked. And if you had nothing but former drunks, they would just laugh at everything. Yeah. You know, so much that there was like no rhythm to the show whatsoever because you're just at a concert, you know. Yeah. And then so like a mix of those people so that they understand that like the dark humor of it you can laugh at. Yeah. And you know, but it's fascinating, right? Like why does, you know, if someone comes up after every performance and says I'm ready to get help, if I was struggling to get sober, I didn't go buy a, you know, 20-pound theater ticket. Like that's such a weird thing to do, except I think it's a really light way to dip your foot into the conversation. Maybe for like the sober curious people that listen to this podcast, it's like, you don't have to admit anything. Yeah. You don't have to, you can just listen. You can just go see the show. You don't have to, you know. It's like I took a lot of quizzes to see if I was an alcoholic. Now, if you're taking a quiz to see if you're an alcoholic, I promise you are. Yeah. You know, but, you know, I was just like, all right, I'll take this quiz and see, you know. Yeah. Whether you're
it's like, no, you're perfectly fine. You're like, good.
That's what I was working for. I was like, I should have said this answer to this, you know. No, and so like that's our goal, you know, because listen, the show should do some good, but no show works unless it's actually just a great night out and a fun evening. Yeah, and I feel like that's so. Listen, it's God bless her for putting this on, because recovery comedy is not a genre. Yeah. You know, but we're like trying to make it one. Yeah. You know, really trying to like change that, what people think it looks like for people to get sober, and to understand that like it can be funny and we can humanize it. Nice. And also that like recovery is possible on the other end of it, regardless of how far down you've gone.
It's so true. I think when we started this, it felt like recovery can sometimes look at this thing, it's like almost going into hell, and there's these big gates and someone saying like, ha ha, like you must defeat me. And we've really tried to tackle this podcast with humor and fun, and I'm really excited to come see the play because I think it's so important, because it's humor's so relatable on every level. And if you make something seem scary, or if you make it seem this huge mountain that you've got to climb, often people don't want to start to climb it. And if you can be like, oh, that guy can do it, or that was funny, or I related to that, or that reminded me of this, or that reminded me of my mom or my dad or my journey, rah 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 rah, all of a sudden one day can become possible. And we all know what happens if one day becomes possible, right?
Yeah, you know, every time we do the show, people come in the lobby beforehand, and like, I'm just so embarrassed. I'm like, why have you come? Why did I go to all this work to like get people to come see my story? This is terrible. And then as they leave, what I'm always reminded of is that people are like, oh, well, that was the story of my daughter or my nephew or my uncle. And you're like, oh, that's right, because like 1 in 3 people have a direct relation to someone struggling with substance use disorder. So it's like, oh, all of us know somebody. We just don't talk about it.
Of course.
You know, it just doesn't come up. And so when you think it's this very particular thing, and it's like, no, everybody in the US, everybody in the UK, right, has a somebody in their life. And it's just a matter of whether that family talks about it or not.
Yeah. No, of course. No, I think it is relatable to pretty much everyone. Yeah. So, and when's it on until?
It starts July 9th and it runs to the middle of August. So
amazing.
Yeah, so there's kind of like perfect, 5 or 6 weeks.
I think if we time this out, this episode will come out July 10th.
Oh, perfect.
So if you're listening, go.
Yeah, that's right. Immediately. That means we're tomorrow night.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, show up.
No, that's great. Like Jamie said, I'm really excited to go and see it. And yeah, it sounds perfect for me. You know, a bit of dark humor is perfect for you.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I think like, I mean, you guys have really tried to like demystify, you know, recovery, and like it can be joyful, and also like, you know, crazy things happened, and like that's part of it, and you can't act like it wasn't,
no, of
or
course.
you're lying, you know. And so I feel like that's the thing I tried to do with this show, and when I see it connect with audiences. Oh, I'll tell you a funny story. So when we first did it, I was feeling like really like altruistic about it. And so I was like, I'm going to raise a bunch of money, and I'm going to get people from recovery that are in rehab, and I'm going to bus them to see the show, you know, and it's going to change their life. Because even though I'm sober, like I still, moderation is not a great tool of mine, you know, so I'm like, I'm still going all in. And so it was this crazy night where we busted all these people from rehabs to see the show. And what I hadn't thought about was that none of them had ever seen a piece of theater before. So like they're talking back to the stage, they're getting up to go smoke, you know, in the middle of it, they're asking each other what it is. And the actors are just, I mean, it's just like chaos, you know.
That's hilarious.
You know, and then at the end, the very sweetest thing, they didn't know that you're supposed to like applaud or whatever. So one guy stood up and just like put his arms out towards the stage, like he felt like that's what you should do, and then everybody did that, just like they were like this. But these poor actors are just acting, and people are like getting up and leaving and smoking and coming back, and like, what did I miss? Like they're watching TV.
Amazing,
you know. And but it was like, oh, okay, great. So like next time, like do a little bit of education upon what the art form is.
Yeah.
But it was great. It was like, even though theater wasn't their thing, and that's the first thing they'd ever seen, of course, I came out, and the opening line of the show was like my first, you know, I was 12 and I had my first drink, and everybody like applauded. You know, because they were like, yeah, all right, great, okay, I know this story.
Yeah.
Let's go. You know, this isn't stodgy theater. This isn't everything we've been taught the theater is, where you're going to feel uncomfortable or dumb.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, nope, I get it right away.
Amazing.
Amazing.
I think it might be time for
the big three.
The big three questions. Right. So, question one. For anyone who's thinking about going on a journey of sobriety, what would your single best piece of advice be?
You know, I would say be unafraid just to try it. You know, I think, God, when I was in rehab, there was a woman who asked our rehab counselor, she was like, wait, so I can't have champagne at my daughter's wedding? And her friend was like, you don't even have a boyfriend. You know, and so it's so clear that like we all get obsessed with like the future and what this will rob us of. And so just to say like, and that's why I think like, you know, like you should taper off, but like what's great about Dry January is like, sure, just try it. See what your life is like. Just do 30 days, you know. Do you have more money in your bank account? Do you apologize less? Do you, you know, feel better? Well, then just note that, you know. So I think there's nothing wrong with trying it. I do think, I love this, like, you know, I'm not a big book person, but I love when it says, like, if you're not an alcoholic, then go try some controlled drinking. And I'm always like, damn you. Because I would never be able to, like, have 2 drinks and then get up and walk away for the evening,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, so just try, you know. I would say it's worth a shot, and, you know, just check in on what your life is like after you've given it just a little break.
Amazing. Question number 2. What's the single best thing that sobriety has brought you?
Definitely my wife and my daughter. I mean, that just wouldn't have been possible. Like I don't know how people parent while using. I mean, like, I'm exhausted as is. You know, it's like 3 a.m. and my daughter just sits up and throws up, you know, and you have to like grab her and run her to the bathtub. And sometimes kids just throw up, you know, and I don't know how, you know, and I just don't know how you are present in those ways if you can't do it. So I just think being able to be with my family and not, and you know, like I was a big liar too. I was always coming up with, actually when I got sober, I was like, I really had to work to stop lying. I was just lying for no reason. I was just always trying to keep the stories a little bit different so you really couldn't track where I was. Yeah. And so now to be able to be honest with both of them and not have to lie about what those things is, like that's a gift that I didn't think was possible.
Amazing.
Oh, I love that. And finally, we would love Sean to write a letter to drunk Sean. So if you could say, "Dear Sean," what would you say to your former drunk self?
Dear Sean, I know that it feels like it's not possible and that it's who you are, but it's impossible to imagine who you will be on the other side. And I wish you could get there sooner. I wish that you could understand that it's not as terrifying, that you won't stop being you, that you won't stop being an artist, that everything that you're letting go of, you will be so thrilled to have let go when you get to the other side of this. And I wish you just told more people what you were doing. I wish you didn't think that you had to do it all alone. Love, Sean.
I love that.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh my God, thank you both.
That was amazing.
Yeah. We can't wait to come see.
Yeah, and good luck with it. I have no doubt it'll be a success. And we'll definitely be down to see it.
Awesome. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.